It's safe to say the 1980s were a weird decade, but what it lacked in normalcy it made up for with personality. Celebrities, athletes, and everyday people seem to embrace being odd more than they do today. This was especially prominent in the weirdest position in football. Kickers of this era had some of the weirdest gimmicks in sports. From doing rituals before kickoff to kicking barefoot, they were really up to strange things. Today on Football Lore, we go over the era of the barefoot kicker, why this fad started, and why it eventually faded into obscurity. Be sure to press the like button if you're excited, and subscribe if you enjoy football documentary videos. Kickers have always been one of the weirder positions in football. Most American sports don't really build the skills necessary to be great at it, so it has had a history of attracting more eccentric American athletes, or in some cases European talent to the position. The hard-nosed, aggressive nature of a defensive lineman doesn't lend itself well to a clutch kicker, but they also don't need to be the leader of a team the way a quarterback does. The perfect example of this type of person is NFL legend Tony Franklin. He had played in college at Texas A&M and had shown himself to be an elite leg talent. Tony, however, was a practitioner of the barefoot kicking method. He felt like he could get a better feel on the ball for accuracy without cleats. Football cleats at the time were incredibly clunky and horrible for kicking. While most kickers today wear soccer cleats, this was not common at the time. This meant barefoot kicking really was better for accuracy. What made it even more interesting to NFL scouts was the fact that Franklin had a cannon for a leg and seemed to be backing up this strange theory with statistics. There was no arguing that he was one of the best kickers coming out of college, but it was a weird sight to see someone with one shoe missing lining up for a kickoff. The level of his domination can't be understated. He held most relevant college kicking records. He had one game where he had two 60-plus yard field goals, and the longer of the two would be the NCAA record for longest field goal. Before players like Franklin, kickers were known to be incredibly inconsistent, and his ability to consistently make kicks showed that it was worth acquiring a talented kicker instead of just someone to fill the roster spot. The Eagles decided to draft Franklin in the 1979 NFL draft with a third-round pick, and he would make an immediate impact with a field goal in his first game. The sight of Franklin lining up Shoeless is still an iconic moment in Eagles history, and he would go on to be a great consistent kicker for the Eagles. His style and consistency was noticed by other teams, and especially other kickers, and people started to replicate the style. Since football cleats were so horrible for kicking, once kickers started to realize they didn't have to wear them, it was a game changer. There was no rule against kicking barefoot at any level of football, and since it was working for people, there was no incentive to create one. Kickers like Rich Carlos would win huge games while kicking barefoot. Rams legend Mike Lansford would further cement the method as legitimate. As much as we all know that the NFL hates fun, it wasn't some type of rule change that forced barefoot kicking out of the spotlight. Instead, it was better technology that slowly pushed the style into the history books. Like we said, most of the kickers had started to kick barefoot because football cleats were horrible for it. But as the sport grew and soccer began to grow in popularity, people soon discovered that not all cleats were created equal. Kicking a ball barefoot is not comfortable at all, especially when you're kicking it hard enough to send it flying 60-plus yards. Distance was never the weakness of football cleats. It was always accuracy. If players had a way to not damage their foot while also making sure they had control of the ball, it would be a total no-brainer for players to switch. Barefoot kicking simply was not better performance-wise than wearing special cleats, and the downsides started to outweigh possible benefits. There was also an increase in kickers who were transitioning from other sports into the position. NFL teams began to sign professional soccer players to be kickers, and these players had been kicking with cleats their entire life. There was no longer a culture around barefoot kicking, and as these new kickers began to set records of their own, there was even less of a reason for young players to replicate the style. And while football is a contact sport where the risk of injury is always present, teams began to be uncomfortable with the increased injury risk. Players have never been cheap, but with kicker contracts easily breaking $5 million a year for elite kickers, it just isn't worth losing Justin Tucker for 2 games because someone stomped on his toes. When you have an elite kicker, it is a game changer, and there is no reason to risk an important position for no benefit. Imagine if your team's kicker decided that he was going to kick barefoot for style points, just to get taken out by a totally preventable injury. The team is angry, the fans are angry, and the player's wallet will be angry when they stop getting their game checks. Players who use the barefoot kicking style are still iconic, and they were willing to put their bodies on the line for a competitive advantage, but it wasn't necessary anymore. Technically, there is still no official rule against barefoot kicking in the NFL, and to Tomorrow, Adam Vinatieri could come out of retirement as a barefoot kicker, and there would be nothing anyone could do about it. Whether or not the organization you are playing for is going to be okay with it would be a different story. Overall, in the history of the league, 9 kickers have played barefoot. The last official shoeless kicker to score points in an NFL game was Jeff Wilkins, who was playing with the Seattle Seahawks in a 2002 game. The Seahawks were up pretty big, and honestly, it wasn't like Wilkins was going to be swaying the outcome of the game based on the extra point he was attempting. Regardless, his bare toes were on the field when he sent the ball through the uprights. Wilkins was not even someone who regularly kicked barefoot. It just happened to occur during this game. The last professional kicker who regularly kicked with no shoes was a tie between Rick Carlos and Lansford, who both played until the 1990 season. Overall, shoeless kickers and punters will always have a place in football lore, but their disappearance is just a testament to the fact that technology will always evolve. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to press the like button and let me know what you thought in the comment section below. We post football documentaries often, and our last video was about the richest NFL player in history, Jerry Richardson, who managed to destroy his legacy in his later years. Click on screen to watch it now.